found an old David Brown 990 for $500, so snapped it up. It's been sitting in a paddock for about 7 years. Apparently it just stopped and he was having fuel issues with it. There is actually a little bit of water in there, so try and get that out. You can see air bubbles coming up through that inlet port. That tells me it's getting air in the line somewhere between here and the fuel tank. I don't think that seal is doing much good anymore, so I'll take that off. I could get an O-ring to sit in there. That might do it. No more air coming out of there, so I think that solved the problem. That hydraulic cylinder rod is quite bent. It's not retracting all the way in. That's just about perfect now. Less than a millimetre in that. There's quite a bit of play in the final drive bearings. Oh, that's perfect. Nice and tight, but still turning freely. That'll do me. Alright, I've got it running pretty well now and fixed up that bent hydraulic ram. That's working well. Tightened up that wheel bearing, but now I've done a little bit of work with it and found that 2 of the rams are leaking, so I'll redo the seals on those, and also the water pump leaks quite badly, so I'll whip that out and replace it, and then I'll just do all the oils and filters and it should be ready to go back to work. No wonder that ram was a bit lazy. Look at the state of those O-rings. Man, they're fully eaten up. Alright. So there's a seal inside there, and 3 on the outside. So I just have to replace this wiper seal and the O-rings on this piston. Cap seal in there. I'm not too worried about those internal seals because there was no leaks coming out of there and it still feels pretty tight, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I've got the new seals for the bucket ram because the rod was bent so badly. It's been riding on one side. There's a bit of a sharp edge left on the edge of that groove where it's been rubbing. That would cut the new seals up if I leave it like that, so I'll just give it a quick file and clean it up. Making sure I don't scratch that internal surface with the edge of the file, just holding it up with my finger there. All I want to do is just take that sharp burr off all the way around. And the file is on a bit of an angle so that I'm not taking any off the side surface either. No more sharp edges on that, that's nice and smooth. Got to make sure they're not twisted. You can see the line all the way around, that looks good. These O-rings are so much easier to put in than the hard seals. Alright, that's ready to go back on. That cylinder bore has quite a bit of scoring in it, so I'll give it a quick hone. I've got the cylinder hone, but it's obviously too short to reach right down the end, so I'll have to make some sort of extension on it. That is better. It's taken a few of those lines away. That'll do me. Try and tighten all these up evenly so puts even pressure on that plate. Looking good, no leaks. Alright, I've got the cap off there, but there's a bushing in there that really doesn't want to come out. I've had a look for any sort of locking pin, but there's nothing on the outside. So I have a feeling that I'm going to have to cut the end off the cylinder, because there doesn't seem to be any way to pull out that bushing, and it feels like solid steel up in there somewhere, the way it sounds when I pull that ram out. So I have a feeling it's one that you can't pull apart at this end. So I took it around to my friend's place, who's he's done hundreds of rams, and he knows this type, so I let him have a go, and he ended up having to cut the end off anyway, which is pretty much where I was at. So he did that for me, and got it all apart, got the packing out of there. Unfortunately I wasn't there and I didn't film it, so you just have to imagine what it looked like. He got the new packing for me. So they just go back in there like that, and then the cap's screwed on, and then you weld this cap back on. You can see it's just a displacement ram. It doesn't have any piston or seals on the end of it. It's just a ring to keep it centered inside the cylinder. I'll give this rod a wee bit of a tidy up. There's a wee bit of rust on it, the pitting, so I'll give that a good sand and clean it up and put it all back together. The cup side goes towards the bottom of the ram, because that's where the pressure will be coming from. So I'll just wind that cap on loosely and then push the rod through, and I'll do it up once it's all welded up. Make sure it's all seated properly in there. Feels pretty good. I noticed there's a few marks from when it was disassembled, so I'll just go through with a bit of sandpaper and knock off the high points. That should be okay. Put a little bit of grease on that packing before I try and get the rod through. I'll put some water in that fitting. I'll just apply some air pressure there and that should show up any leaks. There's not a drop of water coming out of there, so I'm pretty happy with that. Just use the old seal to knock that on. The wiper's all evenly seated in there, so that ram's ready to go back on. Do it. Quite amazed that it actually lifted that up. That must be a good half a ton there. Still no leaks. So a load like that will show up any weaknesses in the hoses and seals. It all seems to be good though, so far. That's awesome. Alright, I noticed the water pump is leaking coolant past the seal. It drips out constantly and empties the radiator out down to that level over about 3 days. I did try to pump it full of grease. It stops the leak for a wee while, but then It pushes out through after it's been running for a few minutes. It's the drain tap down there. I think it must be clogged up though. Oh yeah, there you go. I will test this thermostat. This water's about 80 degrees Celsius, so that should open up. Okay, you can see that is opening up now, so that's working alright. That'll let the water through. Just clean all the old sealant and rust off there. Got it. That's got it. That's the seal there that had given up. You can see it's fairly well cracked and not really doing its job, so that's where the water was leaking through. It is looking pretty pitted and rusty, so I might as well just buy a new one. That feels a lot better. Nice and snug. I might as well change the oils and filters while I'm at it. Give it a full service now that I've come this far. Yeah, it's fairly dirty. Get a new one of those in. Looks like the right size. Always pays to check before you take it out of the bag, in case you have to send it back. Spring. When I took this bypass valve out, it was around that way. But it doesn't seem to fit into the filter. So I reckon it goes around that way. I better check the manual and have a look at that, because the oil comes from the outside to the inside and that valve pushes inwards, so it must go that way. Don't you think? Yeah. Anyway, have a look on the manual, see what it says. So the small end goes towards the engine. When it came out, that end was facing the engine. So we'll put it around the right way. Perfect. Caramel sauce, my favourite. Gotcha. We'll get a new one of those. You can see it is quite full of crud in there. I don't know how much filtering it was doing. The way it was sort of crushed up there. Oh, look at that screen, that's disgusting. There's supposed to be like a fine mesh there, and it's just fully clogged up with crud. Bypass valve. Put it in the dishwasher, eh? Don't think the missus would appreciate that. Yeah, there's like quite a bit of rust in there, and probably from those rusty front end loader rams, I suppose. That's a lot better than it was, so that'll do me. It's like that, wouldn't it? I think so. So I bought a whole lot of these little Neo magnets. I'll just pop a few in the corners, and that should catch any metal shavings. So I'm putting gasket sealant on one side and grease on the other. Next time it needs to be pulled off, it'll stick and release on this greased surface, and that'll prevent the gasket from ripping. Looks like another oil filter in there, so we'll crack that open and have a look. Yuck, that's a bit messy. changing. It's up to the top of the lines. You can barely see it, it's so clean. So that's the power steering reservoir. There's a filter in there, so I'll drain that out and change the filter. Cap, oh, that filter's fallen apart, look at that. Yeah, that's quite dirty in there. And the fact that it's broken apart means it's probably been in there at least since last century, probably 30 to 50 years. So I'll get a new one. This one's stainless steel, so it should hold together a bit better. It's from Ag Spares in New Zealand. They seem to stock a lot of parts for these old tractors. Okay, that's the power steering filter and fluid change. That gear lever boot has seen better days, so I'll put a new one on. Because if it gets rain in there, it just goes straight into the gearbox. That'll keep the rain out. That other one's pretty good, so I won't worry about it. There's no cracks in it. Alright, the next job is to get rid of this old steel seat. It's a real backbreaker, this one. Like, they were only $120, $130 from Ag Spares New Zealand. Nice foam padding and suspension as well, so much easier on the back, so I'll put that in. Hopefully it'll just bolt straight on, but I might have to drill a couple of holes, but looks like there's only a couple of bolts there holding it on. So it looks like I'll have to put a plate on there because this the seat's just a wee bit narrow. That's going to be so much easier on the back. that makes life easier, being able to carry 2 bins around and the log splitter behind it. So it's a good firewood machine. Everything's holding up well, no leaks in the new seals, they're all dry, and no coolant coming out of there. I paid $500 for it and probably spent another $600 on fluids, filters and seals. So I got a pretty good tractor for $1,100 now. Very happy with that. So that'll do it for now. See you next time.